Welcome to They Talk Funny. This is Paul Ash. My guest today is, Canadian Comedy Award nominee, a gentleman with 2 comedy albums, a person who performs in both English and in French. Please welcome to the screen, Julien Dionne.
Yeah,
Welcome.
buddy, thank you. How is my sound? Is it better?
It's better. There's still the odd little bit of a crack.
yeah.
We're trying to track it down, but it's
It does. Oh, weird. Yeah, I
I'm
hear
not
the crackle.
I'm not hearing it now.
Oh no, you're good. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
It's all
I
right.
think it was my volume.
Welcome to Sound Check.
Yeah. Hey, buddy. It's good. First of all, good to see you. I haven't seen you in so long, years.
You know, you popped up in my memories of at the a picture of us at the Yuck Yucks Comedy Club in Moncton.
Oh yeah.
So,
You had a lot more hair back then. You had a.
I had the curls. The curls were happening.
Yeah.
I think I still have the same amount of hair. It's just migrated to different parts of my body. Old hack joke, yay!
Oh, my mom is watching. I just saw a comment.
Yeah, she's saying hello, Julian. Looking
Mom.
forward to episode 64.
There you go. That comment that my mom it made it sound like she has tuned in for all 63 episodes leading up to, but I can almost promise this is her first time tuning in.
And the weird thing is, just because of technical difficulties, the guest who was 63 will be actually the guest on the next episode. So there was okay, I don't want to mention it because, well, I didn't want to mention it the day of because he didn't want his family to learn it that way. But Jim Madrinos will be my guest, and I think he's had enough time to talk to his family. He was in a car accident like an hour before we were supposed to go live.
Oh, no way. So you might be breaking this to any of Jimmy's family members that are watching right now.
That was last week, so I'm hoping that
Got it.
everybody over in Greece has now been informed and fully aware.
Is my sound okay? Because I do hear like a little bit of a feedback and it sounds distorted. Is it okay? I don't know.
Your sound. I'm not hearing an echo, but there's like a slight muting to your sound. You are clear. We want to welcome. Look, we got viewers here. If you have any questions for Julian, just drop them into the chat, comments, etc. We're going to work out the sound as we go, but I think you sound good, Julian. So don't worry.
Okay, so it's not like distorted or it's not clipping off the high ends or anything. It sounds good.
I'm not hearing it that way. If anyone out there wants to say, Jerry Dionne, is this a family reunion that we have happening?
Oh my God!
Hello, Jules.
My parents watching. Hey, mom and dad. Here we go. This is
Mom and Dad. We've got twice that amount of people watching. Here we go. Love both you guys. Been too long. Dave Genius.
Oh, there's Dave. Haven't seen him in a long time.
Things are beginning to open up. I know that I'm going to tomorrow night. I'm going to be the show that I produce is having its first episode back tomorrow. So I'm a little bit nervous, but it's going to be good.
What's the show? You've always. This is the thing with Paul Ash. So again, we haven't seen each other in years, but you are a mover and shaker. You're always producing stuff, putting on shows. You're a guy that makes things happen, and I like that about you. I always have. And back in the Halifax days, like back in the day, pre-Yuck Yucks Halifax, so pre-2006, you were always putting on shows, and yeah, man. So it's good. So what's the show that's starting up tomorrow?
It's called the Vaudeville Variety Show. I've
seen it with the red curtain on the back, and it's kind of like a variety show-esque.
Yeah, it's actually it takes place in the Wiggle Room, which is the only full-time burlesque bar in all of Canada.
I think
all of North America.
Wow.
Yes. So it's so we have burlesque, we got music, we have circus arts, and we have comedy, of course.
Comedy coming in right at the very bottom after everything else. As always, it ranks just behind amateur backyard wrestling, but we got comedy.
It actually, with the crowd, it's one of the more popular features. I mean, I can't say, like, we have the audience choose who their favorite acts are so that act gets a bonus, and comedy ranks up there just as often as music and burlesque.
Oh, good, perfect.
Circus art is a little rarer for to have, but when we do have it, it's usually so extreme that people just go and they win.
What qualifies as circus art? That's a very vague kind of intriguing.
It is vague, and we have a lower ceiling, so we're not doing trapeze, but we do have had contortionists, we've had blockheads, we've had jugglers, we've had. Who's interviewing who? Just I just.
Well, they did. We haven't seen each other in many years, and I remember you early on. When I started, you were already in the game, but I've always thought I've held you in fond regard in my head. So this is great. This is kind of a reunion of sorts. It's been many years. So yeah, there'll be questions back and forth.
Yeah, all right. There's, I mean, like you've got 2 albums out, which I have no albums out, so power to you on that. There's, what was it? Too Soon and Beginnings.
Yeah, they were released early on in my career. I mean, Too Soon was 6 years in, and Beginnings, I think, 8 years into my career. So, yeah, they're out there. They're out there. Yeah.
What was Too Soon? What people were telling you about releasing an album 6 years in, or
Too Soon is very descriptive of what it is, and I describe it in the album jacket as just like an artist trying to find his footing and his place in the thing, which was very much where I was at, because as you know, Paul Ash, comedy is very much you develop in front of people. You know, you like musicians get to. By the time musicians play in front of people, they've played in their bedrooms or garages with their bands for many times. But as comedians, we develop in front of people. So, and there's no other way around it. So there's a lot of embarrassing stuff that happens. A lot of like I know that there's some people probably in my hometown of Moncton that have seen me early on, 14, 15 years ago. That if I was brought up now in conversation, they would go, "Oh, I saw that guy. Yeah, it's not that good."
Yeah,
but and so I recorded an album in that space
to always be a reminder.
Yeah, just to always remind yourself that hey, this is. But really, for me, the albums were a way to kind of catalog my body of work, just to kind of quote unquote retire material. Just like, okay, I've done this, I've performed it hundreds of times. Now it's I'll never do it again. But it's just like kind of like a catalog, just to have it as a thing, you know, like. That's the way I see my albums, just as like documents of my work. Yeah.
For anyone unfamiliar, Julien also performs in French as well as English. You didn't perform in Spanish or anything while you were living in New York.
Korean, actually, I started. So I'm a trilingual comedian. No, bilingual. Yes, I started performing in French about 4 years ago. I am French. That's my first language. I'm Acadian French from New Brunswick, southeast of New Brunswick, Scoudouc, where both of my parents are watching from right now. And yeah, I started in English because in New Brunswick we're influenced by American pop culture, so we consume, you know, Seinfeld and Simpsons and stuff. Even though we were French, we would consume English kind of pop culture. Yeah.
Were you raised like? Did you go to school in an immersion school, like a
not even immersion, full blown French, like full blown. When I go home, talk to my parents and my friends and my family, everything is in French. But comedy for me seemed like it just seemed like an American English thing. So I was a huge Seinfeld fan, Ellen DeGeneres fan, and back then it was just kind of like. Doing it in French didn't seem like, or it seemed like a diluted version of it. I don't know. It seemed like French comedy to me wasn't really a thing. It was just kind of like, let's do it in English. And so I did it in English for, I guess, 12 years before I, 4 years ago, started in French on accident. At the
accident?
Yeah, I was I was doing a bilingual show at the Hubcap Fest in 2017 at the Capitol Theatre in Moncton. And I was on a bilingual show, so it was like French and English. So I was like, okay, no problem, I'll do an English set. And then like a week before, Robert Gallant, their director of the festival, was like, how's your French set coming? I'm like, what? the fuck are you talking about, my French? And he goes, well, we're doing a switch up. Like the French comics are doing in English, and you're going to do French. So I'm like, oh my God. He goes, he goes, you know what? It's a week out, so you can do 50-50 if you want. You can mix it up. And but I rose to the challenge, and I said, you know what? I'll do all French. So and it was easy because it was in Moncton, so I could, you could get away with more English words thrown in the mix and a little bit of Frenglish. So
J'aimerais ça. Je dis français maintenant. Je suis idiot. Idiot. So I'm working. I did a bilingual show once. And I found out it was bilingual because I was on it.
Funny.
So it's like I had to slow down some of the material, and it was like half the crowd would laugh, and then the other half, very polite. The other half would laugh because the other half of the crowd was laughing, or somebody translated the joke to them.
Well, the thing is, for bilingual shows, and if there are any producers, comedy producers, or aspiring comedy producers watching, bilingual shows don't work. It just doesn't work because if you bill a comedy show as bilingual, you'll get French people in the audience because English people will not come to a bilingual show. They just won't, and that's fine. But it's almost every bilingual show I've been part of, which has been a lot of shows, I just end up doing all French because it just doesn't work. It's really tough. There's nuances and little things, but it's.
But you've actually recorded TV gala sets in French. I mean,
yes.
You're saying, like, are you sort of translating your material that you have in English already, or are you developing premises in French?
I'd say 90% is translatable, 10% is exclusive to either language. So I'll write some stuff in French, 10%. The other, I just translate. And yes, I did do a Just for Laughs gala last year in French. And this is the thing, Paul. It was actually one of the worst experiences of my life. It should be the best. It's like the top thing you can do in this country, as you know, a Just for Laughs gala at the legendary Denis Theatre. Mm-hmm. And so we were doing galas last year during COVID, and these festivals have to keep going because of subsidies and government grants and so on. So they keep the television performances. So the festivals were like canceled because of COVID, but the TV tapings had to continue. So they were doing 2 weeks of galas at the Denis Theatre last October, end of September, early October. My gala was on the last day, October 3rd. On October 1st, Montreal went into a red zone. So they for 2 weeks leading up to the first, they had 250 people because it was capped off in the Denis Theatre, which Denis Theatre is about 3,000 people. It's huge.
Yeah.
So they could have 250 in there leading up to, so they kept them all on the lower level. They're on the ground level. And all huddled together, and it looked good. They shot it through a keyhole as they do, and so it looked like a full theater. And then on my day, so they went to Red Zone on October 1st. Mine was on October 3rd. Zero audience. So there was actually no. And so the producers come out and they tell us, they go, "Hey, listen, no audience. We can't because of government regulations. So, but when it comes out next summer or whatever, it came out in the spring, I guess." They go, it'll look fine because we're going to use the B-roll footage of the 2 weeks of galas leading up to, with the 250 people shot through a keyhole. So it will look great. So just play for the camera. It won't. They're essentially telling you, this is really going to suck in the room, but don't worry about it. It'll come out fine on TV. And they were right. It really did suck balls in the room. And it came out fine on TV. Dude, it was actually a nightmare. Like, I've had comedy nightmares of performing big opportunities and no one's laughing. This was it. So it's this huge set, this huge production at Denis Theatre, and great lineup and huge comics. And it was like, okay, this is the real deal. And so no audience. So I come out and do my opening joke, of course. Nothing, of course, because there's nobody there. There's absolutely, and everybody's doing their job. Like, there's camera guys and sound and lights people, and so no one's like watching the show. They're just like doing their job, and they're like, "You do your job, we'll do ours." So no one's actually like laughing. There's a couple producers sitting in the back of the room. Dude, it took me I took about 20 minutes to do an 8-minute set because I kept saying, oh, I'll take that one over again. I'm going to do that one again. I'm going to do that line again. Oh, hold on, let me start over. And I was soaking wet, full of sweat, complete silence in this giant cavernous theater. And but they were right. It came out. It looked great when it came out. It looked like a full audience, huge. It looked like I killed, which I did not. And I was like, well, geez, they were right. It did look a lot better than it was, but it was one of the worst experiences of my life.
This is why you should always go see comedy live, kids. All right, see comedy live.
You're so right. It's such a live
specials
performance.
Yeah. It's what is it? Jazz and stand-up comedy are the two native North American art forms.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, that makes sense.
That were built here. Shouldn't blues be in there in that list as well? I'm not.
I would say blues. Where else would blues come from? I mean, it's very Americana.
I mean, people have been upset before, but I don't think they had been musically upset. So,
yeah, not quite as upset as Americans have put to song. But anyway, yeah, you're right. A comedy is such a live art form, and I hear this all the time. I mean, people will see comics on or watch specials on Netflix, and they're fine and stuff, and it is fine. But there's nothing like being in a room. There really is nothing like being in a comedy club on a Saturday night early show. Like, there's just nothing like it. And in Canada, there's some of the best comics, some of the best work happening week after week in comedy clubs. I mean, of course, because of the pandemic, not so much, but it really is a live art form where there's nothing like being in the room. I mean, this is
it's like a sense of community. I mean, like, there's a vulnerability to laughing, and that's why a lot of comedy clubs are fairly dark, right? Because people feel more comfortable, less vulnerable, and can open up.
Which is why corporates suck. Because usually there's a bunch of light, it's all lit up, and people are like self-conscious laughing. You're absolutely right. In the dingy, dark basement, keep it as dark as possible, and that's the best kind of circumstances for comedy.
All right, I'm getting off track here, but like beyond Jen, who are some of your favorite Canadian comedians?
Oh, some of my favorite Canadian.
Soon as you said being dark and in a basement, I was thinking Rob Pugh. Just because
I was just going to say Rob Pugh. Obviously, I have to say Jen Grant, one of the best doing it. Yes. Absolutely. Rob Pugh, fantastic comic. Alex Wood, Mike Rita. I mean, there's so many people doing such good work. Some people that have gone away, John Hastings, Graham Kay. I mean, there's just so many. There's really so many. Who? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, Paul Ash. We both know Peter White, great comic in Canada. Rob Ross. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot.
The purpose of this show is generally to talk about comedy and comedy writing, and we just jumped into your career, and fiddled around with meaty fingers, but when it comes to writing, how disciplined do you consider yourself to be with writing? Because, I mean, you were talking about retiring material. Obviously, that is part of an effort of forcing yourself to make sure that you are continually creating new chunks that stand alone, not based off of old stuff.
Yeah, basically, I think I write a lot on stage, so I will just live my life. And things happen, and I'll send myself text messages, or I have a notes app, as we all do on our phones, and then I'll try things on stage for the first time. That's kind of like the first time I'll take an idea, I'll take it on stage and trying to find the beats and the punch lines and the tags and stuff on stage a couple times, and then I'll write it out the second time. But it's really on stage that I find most of it. But the rub is really once you get off stage to then document, because
are you audio or video recording all your open mic sets, or
audio for sure? I do video a lot of it, but at the very least audio. But at least it's just something to kind of Because there's, as you know, there's when you perform, there's these magic moments that happen, and so you want to kind of reproduce those. So I'll start on stage, bullet point form, find the funny, and then I'll write it out. And in fact, starting comedy in French 3-4 years ago has really made my writing better. Where in French, it just so happened I got a lot of television opportunities to do galas and stuff. So then about 8, 10 maybe televised galas, and when you do those, you have to submit a script word for word. And I had never done that before, ever written out my comedy word for word. I'm not disciplined in that way, so it's forced me to do that over multiple occasions. So I guess if I was to highlight my process, I would say I go on stage, right, in bullet point, find it, then I write it out. Almost word for word, and it really forces you to. And when you do sit down and write it, I think a good balance between writing on stage and on paper, you really exhaust a premise, and you're able to attack all angles of a premise. Because if you do it all only on stage, and I know a lot of comics do just on stage, and I did just on stage for many years, you kind of miss some opportunities to exhaust a premise. Whereas if you do it on paper, then you can really think it out and hash it out. But if you do only paper, then when you come to perform it on stage, you're not in the room anymore. You're thinking of the script that you wrote, so you're removing yourself from the room, and it's not as an authentic performance, so people kind of detach from it. So I think a marriage between writing on stage and on paper is the best way to get the most out of your premises or ideas, so that you can use the in the moment stuff on stage, the spontaneous stuff, use the juice, that nervous energy, and then you can sit down in front of a computer after and really find some diamonds in the rough. That way you can really exhaust it. So I think a marriage between both, so that you're always kind of present in some fashion in the room, I think that for me has been the best way to write.
I do have to agree that there is got to be like a melding of ways to do it to make it better. Now you mentioned that you type it on the computer. Do you ever, because you started early 2000s, did you ever pen and paper it?
Honestly, it's pen and paper mostly. I only write it on the computer when I have to submit things for television, and I've been fortunate that in French, I've like I said, I've had 8 or 10 galas over the last 4 years in different festivals and stuff, that has forced me to sit and write my material and create files and folders in my computer for. But never before. I always old school notebook, and I don't know if you're like this, but I get inspired by new notebooks. So I'll go to chapters and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to get a new notebook. And so I get a new notebook. I get all excited about it, the feel and the smell of it. And you take it home and it's this new thing. And then you write for about 7 pages and then nothing, and then you move on. So I've got about 40 notebooks that have 6 to 8 pages that are full, and the rest is completely empty.
It's almost like a notebook fetish. Yeah, I'm very familiar.
You just get excited about a notebook. This is going to change my life. I'm going to write my new hour in this notebook. And you write, it starts with comedy, and then it's the page by page 4, you're on a to-do list. And then by page 6, you're just signing your autograph over and over and doodling. and that notebook ends up in a Rubbermaid bin in the shed. But ultimately, it's I've got all these notebooks and my set lists and stuff. It's all hand pen to paper sort of thing, analog.
It's because one of the things that I like, I love to type it out, but I find that I miss too much.
Right.
Like, when I'm
fast as your fingers.
Well, it's not so much that. It's like when I'm writing, which is arguably slower than how I type. I can like underline a word easily, or I could show where the emphasis should be said in the word, or I can circle something, or I can do a little doodle to say, okay, this is what I'm doing here at that moment.
Yeah.
and you don't do it. Do you ever rehearse out loud, or do you ever like explore a premise verbally,
Well, interesting.
other than being on stage?
Absolutely not before until about a couple years ago. And this is very much like getting into French comedy has really shifted my way of writing and creating material. Whereas before, never. I was always of the school of thought, and I still believe this. You can't practice stand up other than on stage, right? There's no other way, as we mentioned off the top, of developing in front of people. That's the best stage time. There's no substitute for that. Having said that, I've done a lot of this Just for Laughs gala I did last year. So the Just for Laughs galas that I did were themed. So it's like, okay, so I submitted all this material, and they're like, well, it's all right, but we really like what you do about your French accent, and because I'm Acadian French from New Brunswick, so it's a very different dialect than Quebecois French.
Do you ever get le petit Acadien, that little stereotype thrown at you?
Absolutely.
We'll talk about that later.
So they go, yeah, we like you said, it's funny stuff, but we really like the accent thing that you've done off the top. And I go, okay, sure, but that's 40 seconds. They go, yeah, well, just stretch that out. If you could give us an 8-minute set of that 40 seconds. So, and this was like 2 or 3 weeks before the gala. So I write from scratch. I'd never done this before, from scratch, where a blank piece of paper, and just stretch and write out this set about my French language. And this was during the pandemic, so I had no places to go practice the set and run it. So for the first time in my life, I was right here in the basement with a microphone, unplugged microphone, in my suit, practicing, rehearsing word for word for the first time in 14 years at the time, just like doing my set, running it. And I have to say, it did help just remembering the words. Now, if you do that too much, you'll slip into what I was talking about earlier, where you're not, you slip into a script and you're trying to remember what you've done, because comedy, after
you're no longer in the moment. Yeah,
you're no longer in the moment. And let's be real, after you've done comedy for so long, you it's not the words that make you funny, you become a funny person. So it's like but when you rehearse too much, you get glued to the words, like the words make me funny, and you get so in this weird script, which is not comedy. Comedy is about just obviously just being funny and making people laugh. And so what was the question? No, I so I have rehearsed, and it did help a little bit, but I feel like there is such a thing as rehearsing too much, where it all of a sudden removes you from the process of just being funny in the moment.
In the moment.
Yeah.
Joey Elias uses that method to write, so his comedy will seem more conversational. Like he'll write out a premise, he'll come with a premise, and then he'll talk it out, listen to it, and then edit, either write it again and scratch out what he doesn't want, and then he'll re-record it again. So he'll know the premise and the twists in it off by heart, but can still sort of stay in the moment of it while performing.
Yeah, if you can find a way to make it conversational. A good way to do that, to practice that muscle, is performing in front of nobody, small crowds. When I lived in New York, a lot of shows were just comics or 2-3 people. I've actually started shows where I was hosting in front of literally 2 people, a couple sitting in the front. So it forces you to, take your material. Because if there's 2 people sitting in the audience and you jump on stage and get into your acts, it's like jarring. It's like, what's happening right now? It's uncomfortable. But if you get on stage and look at the people and talk to them and go, what are you guys up to? But you can still slide in your material in there, but conversationally, it's a whole other muscle, and it's just part of all of the things that make us better comics. Every set makes you better. Every circumstance and situation makes you better. So all of those things, you're working up different muscles that make you better. Like you're not as good or as bad as your last set. We often think that it's a culmination of all of them. Wendy Liebman has said that legendary Wendy Liebman.
Yeah.
She said, some nights you are a rock star. You're the funniest person in the world. Other nights you're terrible, but most of the time, you're fine. And that's kind of what we want to do is get to a place where you're fine, you get the job done every time, it looks easy, make it look easy, and but that all comes with doing a show like you said with Joe, like as Joey Elias would make it conversational or write it in a computer, talk about it on stage, like all of those things come together and make a comedian whole, I think.
Now, I just put up here the link tree for it's linktr.ee/Julien Dionne for all links. So that'll take people to the Lemon Press page, your website. So lemonpress.ca/Julien Dionne, all one word.
If you go to juliendionne.com too, it'll go right there.
It'll go right there. It redirects automatically. Good, cool. You also have your podcast. Do you ever? Now you're doing the podcast 5 days a week, you and Jen. Do either of you take premises there and then maybe work it out, sort of bounce it off of each other for the entertainment of the audience?
Yeah, kind of unofficially. So we do a podcast 5 days a week, and a unique property of our podcast is that, like yours, we do it live. So we do it live on weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern on Facebook and YouTube. And then after,
that time existed anymore.
I know, right? This is my pandemic schedule, by the way. Now I go to bed at like 8:30. Like after this, I'm going straight to bed, and I'm up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock. Post pandemic, I'm gonna have to readjust to performing hours, but we've been doing it at 5 days a week at 7 a.m. Eastern, and we do between an hour and a half and 2 hours every day, and. So we have to fill time. So if I have a premise, I work premises out all the time on the show, and Jen will too. But we don't talk about it beforehand. We kind of sit down, and right here, I'm sitting in my podcast studio now, and usually it's zoomed out a little more the shot, and Jen's to my left, you're right, and but it's created this kind of space for us to crank out content every day, and so it forces us to just dig deep, either premises. Well, I mean, we do a lot of hot topics and trending topics and news and stuff and current events, but our most successful shows are the ones where we just kind of shoot the shit and work out premises. And again, we don't talk to each other about it beforehand. We sit down and do it. And then it's a more authentic reaction. In fact, the podcast has kind of ruined our communication as a couple, because sometimes, and often, I'll think of something or something will happen in my life. I go, obviously, I'm going to tell Jen, but I go, I'll wait till tomorrow morning and tell her on the air to get her authentic response. Like, this happens often where I just keep shit to myself and I go, I'll tell her on the air, because there's something about, like, I could tell her and then tell her again on the air, but then the reaction of like, oh my God, it's just like, I feel weird. So we just do it authentically in the moment. And I actually had a buddy who watches the podcast all the time, and he goes, do you guys talk to each other in real life? Because you bring stuff up and Jen is surprised, like big stuff in life. I go, yeah, we do talk all the time. Obviously we're around each other 24/7, but often I will keep premises and so on for the show, because it just makes for better content when I get an authentic reaction from her.
Have you ever discussed the Petit Acadien stereotype with Jen or on stage?
No, I haven't.
All right. How much has that influenced you and your life that you've had in Quebec? Because I've several Acadian friends of my own. Like I'm not Acadian, though I am from the Maritimes. Have expressed to me frustration with sometimes some of their dealings being.
What do you mean by le petit Acadien? What exactly do you mean?
Like the little lost Acadian, the sort of like some people will talk to them, like pet them on the head
Oh yeah, kind of.
mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're the little lost Acadian. They're-
Well, I get that a lot, and honestly, being Acadian has been a big leg up in Quebec comedy, because as you know, as a straight white man, I don't have much of a leg up when it comes to anything. But being an Acadian in Quebec,
except establishment. Sorry.
yeah, except establishment and privilege, of course. But that aside, you know, my position in this society aside, in Quebec,
I don't have a hook. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, it's a hook, and it's been really great because it's a totally different French than Quebecois, like completely different dialect, accent, and expressions and words are totally different. We have uniquely Acadian words, and we use sometimes English words, which I try not to do. I try to use just French words, but with the Acadian accent. But it's absolutely, I get that stereotype all the time, and but it has created some fun moments on stage and so on. Like I really don't. Like it's a real. It actually is a real leg up. I'll give you an example. One time I was talking about Jen on stage, and I wanted to say my girlfriend of 12 years, fiance now. We're getting married next summer.
Congratulations.
But thank you so much. It was going to be this summer, but COVID, so next summer. But I said, so in English, you'd say my girlfriend of 12 years. So in French, I said ma blonde de 12 ans, which sounds like my girlfriend of 12 years old, my 12-year-old girlfriend, basically. And everyone was like, oh, it was like in a big theater show in Gatineau. And I go, what was going on? They go, well, you don't say the whole audience basically told me that it sounds like your girlfriend is 12 years old. So I go, well, what's the expression? And they go, or what's the proper wordage? And they go, ma blonde depuis 12 ans. And so I go, oh, okay. So it created this moment, and I riffed on it, and we laughed. But 250 people at once gave me a grammatical lesson, so it was kind of fun. So it does create these fun moments. Often people think that the accent is English, which is not. It's because we roll our R's in a different way. But as you do in Spanish, like we roll our R's. Where in Quebec they go back of the throat. We go tip of the tongue. So people confuse that with an English accent. But yeah, I get that stereotype all the time.
There's is it St. Anne's University in Digby, Nova Scotia is an Acadian university, and so the students going there have to sign a contract saying that they will not speak English through the school year. Now I know I've done the show just before the contract takes effect. They'd have a show during their Frosh Week, usually bring in comedians to perform. Have you ever performed at St. Anne's?
Yeah, I have, and I'll be there again on August 3rd next week, or 2 weeks from now. I didn't realize that was a rule because I am French, so I actually had no clue that was an imposed.
Well, the thing is, it's usually at the beginning of the school year. So August 3rd is, I guess, that's the summer courses.
Well, it's we're doing a show. There's an Acadian festival that happens there, and it's the show is on the university campus, but it's not for university students or anything. It's just that it just so happens to be at the theater on the campus there. But
beautiful.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a rule there. I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, I definitely was interesting, and it's like the last night these people get a chance to express themselves in English. And right. They choose to shut up and listen to somebody else. It's so weird. Now, this past year, you developed your podcast. It's only been this past year through COVID.
I actually started the podcast in 2014.
Okay.
So far, we're at today we did our 410th episode. Tomorrow will be our 411th.
Okay. I guess I didn't go back far enough because I saw like episode 1 today was listed as episode 168.
No, 410 today. 410
okay.
Episode.
So
I started the podcast on September 19th, 2014. I didn't do a lot of episodes for the amount of time. So from 2014 to 2020. I did about 150 episodes, which is not a lot over 6 years. But then the pandemic hit, and I hadn't done at that point an episode in about a year and a half. As you know, podcasts are evergreen and they're just always there. The infrastructure is all set up. And so when the pandemic hit and we were on lockdown, I thought, these people were talking about going live and doing these lives and live. So I was like, well, should I do something? I put it out there on social media and people were like, yes. And so like, oh, well, actually, maybe I'll revive the podcast. And so I started alone doing the podcast. I did a few episodes, just kind of shooting the shit. I was going live at 8 p.m. 7 days a week, actually, when I started, because the lockdown was just this. Remember when the lockdown hit, like early March of last year? It just felt like this big. You felt like you were in a movie. I'm like, you can't leave. It really felt like The Purge or something crazy. And my Facebook news feed read like a Rogers Cable community access cable kind of programming guide with everybody just in their little box doing their own thing. Everyone was doing lives and stuff. So I started, or public access is the word I'm looking for. It read like scrolling through the news feed mid-March 2020 was like a public access, like a TV guide thing where everyone's at home doing their own thing, like musicians, comedians, everyone was just like performing. So I started and I did a couple shows and I was in my studio upstairs and Jen was outside and she was replying to stuff I was saying and people were asking, what's Jen saying? I gave her a mic and then forever she was off camera, but mic. And then eventually we moved to the studio. We're both on camera and then we went from 7 days a week to 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And then we moved to the mornings because our internet, it was strictly a logistical decision because the internet in our sector went up by 800% internet usage during COVID. So at night when we were doing it, it was brutal. So we moved to the mornings. No one was on the internet in the mornings. And then it just kind of worked where we would get it done in the morning. We would get our live show up there and posted. And then it was just like, okay, now we have our day. So now it's kind of turned into this big thing where we have this huge following. They tune in Monday to Friday, but the premise of the podcast is essentially that. So it's a podcast. So it's a podcast that we record live because we're lazy. So we do live to tape Monday to Friday at 7. We do, like I said, between an hour and a half to 2 hours. We have guests and so on, and then it's just done and it's up there. But live to tape is beauty because then it's just up there. You don't have to edit. I used to spend so much time editing each episode. Like if I said if I went too much, I would edit those little tisks and tuts, and it would just take me hours to edit a podcast. This way we go live to tape. As soon as we're done, I upload it. It goes to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, everywhere, and then it's just done. We don't think about it. And so the premise of the podcast is essentially wherever you are in Canada or in the States, when you wake up in the morning, Monday to Friday, there's a brand new episode of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. So you don't have to tune in live. A lot of people tell me, oh man, I would watch your show, but I'm not up that early. But it's not that. Yes, sure, we record live and we have our people that watch us live, but it's a podcast that we do 5 days a week so that we do it early so that when you get up, episodes on demand 5 times a week, Monday to Friday.
Boom. That's, yeah. Which is the way to do it. I'm of a similar lazy bent. That's why I'm doing this live. We usually have a few more comments coming in from the audience watching. But I think because last week we did cancel because the car accident.
My parents aren't commenting.
They did. They said hello.
Okay. But this is the thing with doing it live. It's so much better because then you realize that all of the editing and the perfectionist tweaks that you make and the hours and energy that you waste on editing, it doesn't matter. Because this is good now. This is perfectly fine. What we're doing now. One take, put it up. It's all good. I came to the realization that it doesn't matter. All those little imperfections. It's
also more human.
Yes, exactly. If you listen to talk radio, that's it. That's it. It's live. You have a lot of imperfections. It's a human element of it.
Though, not to editing can be helpful, such as You're Just for Laughs gala at the Saint Denis Theatre.
Yeah, exactly.
So, have you ever heard the Brian Regan story?
Where he came out a bunch of times on
Yeah,
stage.
7 times.
What was that? Was that 7? Tell me the story exactly. I don't know all the details, but
As best to my recollection, it's he came out. Brian Regan was like on the huge upswing. This was going to be the year that he might, score a development deal. That was the plan, and he came out for his gala, and he flubbed a setup in like his second joke, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to do that again," because you mentioned how on yours with the empty audience, you said, "I'll do that one again," and then he walked off, came back out, started up the same thing, and the audience was just laughing, looking at him like, "What are you doing?" And then he said, "Okay, you guys have to laugh at this stuff, so I'll start again." And he went off, and he came back on, and then they just were laughing at the setups. And he said, "No, you're not laughing at it right," and went on and off. And I heard of a story from a Canadian comic who saw him in an audition green room, like they were waiting to go into audition. And that comic sort of said, "Hey, I saw the tape of that just last night at a party." Sort of just to be a little bit of a dick, I guess. Play with his mind a little bit before the audition. But Brian Regan, among comedians, is highly respected. But that was, that was something that sort of haunted him, stayed with him for a little bit. But
did it actually hurt him, like in any short term or mid term?
Well, the thing is, that was a time just to talk about hurting. Suzanne, your mom is saying we were busy listening and enjoying the show. So, so it's a good thing she missed all the drug references. It's all. I'm lying, Mom. Don't rewind. Well, the thing is, he
rewind if it gives us an extra view.
Just rewatch it after. The thing is, he was expected to be signing a TV or development deal at that point, which never materialized, because I think at that point, which was the late 90s, it was either late 90s or early 2000s, it was still the time that was a place where a lot of the development execs from the big networks would come.
That's crazy to think it would have sabotaged him in any way, because to be that, like, I'm of the mind of, like, if there are any execs and bigwigs in the audience, that they will see past that and it won't really affect whether, like, to me, it's almost like more ballsy than just coming out and doing your set and plowing through. Like, that to me is like, if I was an exec with NBC or whatever, and I'd be watching this, I would be like, let's talk to this guy, because this guy's got cojones to come out 7 times. I'm of the school of thought to think that would not hurt, but only help with the people that know the difference. Of course, the public can be like, okay, so this is uncomfortable or whatever, but I don't know. I feel like it's almost like taking control. Obviously, it hasn't hurt him. Obviously, in the long run, I mean, he's Brian Regan. He's huge.
He's incredibly talented. Yeah,
one of the best.
But he's never had his own sitcom, or he's never got a movie vehicle, and that was what he was ramping at that time.
But I'm wondering if he would have gotten it had he just come out and done his set. Maybe it would have been the same result, where he would have just been passed on for whatever reason. Because there's a million reasons. It doesn't necessarily have to do.
I mean, there's a thing with buzz, right? So there's pre-festival buzz of the people that, oh, this is going to be their year to go see, and then there's in-festival buzz, and he got bad buzz from that.
Bad buzz, because we're still talking about it 20 years later. So
we are. I mean, but he was in front of 2,800 people,
right,
who had paid, actually, with the gala prices of tickets. I mean, let's face it, maybe a third of the audience is papered, but they're paying $40 to $80 for tickets.
Yeah, and
this guy, to them, feels like they're being disrespected. So the audience isn't vibing on it.
Right.
So it's and then you're also sort of assuming that some of the people who are in power of network development understand the artist point of view.
Right. Yeah. True.
They're more about crunching the numbers of viewership, which is something that artists should be aware of, but not a lot are.
Yeah, I've like honestly, I could see myself doing something like that. Like in retrospect, hindsight, we look back and go, "That was crazy what he did." But I could see myself in the moment being like, "Okay, let me try that again." And then once you commit to having come out 2 or 3 times, and it's not the reaction that you've got, you have to keep going until you're like, "Okay, I'm doing this now." I don't know
Yeah.
why, but I could totally see myself in that position and doing the same thing and convincing myself that it wasn't that bad.
I think it's also like he was feeling a ton of pressure at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And especially which just got amped up because there was so much focus on him. I mean, there's a famous story about Mike McDonald and the year that was supposed to be like Mike McDonald was a Canadian comedy legend,
Legend.
beyond legend, right?
Yeah.
And just because he lived up to the legend.
Hmm.
And there was one year that it was like he was just I'm trying to think of the industry award that he was coming up for and whatnot, and he went there to Just for Laughs, and it was like it was his year. He had the one man show. He had I think he was hosting a gala as well. All this stuff was there. He had people there that were interested in him, and then there was this other act. It was their first appearance at Just for Laughs, and the crowds went wild, and all the development execs went over, and then that guy won the award that Mike expected to
Oh
win.
shit! Yeah.
And then Mike went and he signed himself into a I don't know if mental home is the right word, but he went to take a little
Psychiatric or yeah.
so a psychiatric hospital for a little vacation afterwards.
Man, rest in
Because
peace, Mike McDonald.
yeah
His death was so fucked up. Not to get off track,
yeah
but
no
when you
go right
think
ahead.
about what he's been through, he was on death's door. I remember seeing him. I don't know, like 2012 or something, like on CTV News, and he was gaunt and thin, and he looked like a Tim Burton character, like a pointy chin, like just he did not look like Mike McDonald. He was on death's door. He went on CTV News on the national, pleading for a donor, found a donor, liver donor, got a liver transplant. And I remember when I saw him like looking like a Tim Burton character, I remember thinking, holy shit, Mike McDonald has deteriorated physically to this point. We'll never see Mike McDonald in the physical form that we knew him as before. And then, holy shit, he bounced back. His face got round again. Like he gained his weight again. He got a liver. He got a transplant from a living donor. Got healthy and was like, he looked like old Mike McDonald again. I was like, holy shit, like beyond all odds. And then on the exact day, the 5th, did you know this? On the 5th anniversary of his liver transplant, on the 5th anniversary, on that day, exact day, died of a massive heart attack.
Yeah.
Given a second lease on life, got
5
it.
more years. He had that. He got those 5 more years.
Yes, absolutely, and lived them to the max, and was like his old self again. And to the day, 5 years, dies of a heart. I mean, it was just crazy. That was like crazy shit. You can't write that stuff. If you were to write that, you'd go, "That's not realistic. Find another way of him dying or another time." It's just crazy.
Yeah. No, it's do you know who the comic was that sort of like made the big buzz that year? In the story was the it's a famous story.
Was it the guy that said hamburger?
No,
Oh, who was it?
Carrot Top.
Oh shit! No way.
And that like Mike being the word craftsman that he was, like that I think was kind of like the double stab in the heart that just kind of made him wonder if he was just wasting time.
Well, people shit on Carrot Top, but he's phenomenal at what he does. He's the best at that, at prop comedy. He is the best at that. He's. I mean, you don't end up with a career like Carrot Top's on accident, or like he is very talented. I mean, sure, it's not like you said, apples and oranges. I hate using that expression, and I just used it. But Mike McDonald, Carrot Top, Mike McDonald was all words, razor sharp, razor, like no word
Acting,
economy to the next level.
there's a level of acting with great stand-up comics because there's the emotive context that they use with the words that they are demonstrating with their body, their voice, their manner, and they can basically transport. A great stand-up comic transports an audience to a scene, and allows them to watch it in real time, rather than telling somebody a story in past tense. And Mike
Right.
McDonald was the best at that. I mean,
Oh, he was. He really was. The first time I ever met Mike McDonald was at Yuck Yucks in Moncton. He was coming through town, and I was like, oh my God, legendary Mike McDonald is coming through town. And I asked to do a guest spot. I asked Mark so to do a guest spot, and he asked Mike, and he came back and he was like, no, he said he didn't want any guest spots. I was literally 3 months into comedy, and I was like, fuck that guy, man. What the hell? Doesn't he no, remember where he came from? I was like all offended. Now I get it. Absolutely. I was terrible, but it has nothing to do with that. I just get where he was coming from. But anyway, so like 4 or 5 months later, he was coming back through Moncton, and I got booked as host for Mike McDonald on this big show. And I remember the weekend before, he was in Halifax, and the MC of that weekend had been fired for just not doing the job. And so I had that in the back of my head. And so I show up to the club on the Thursday night in Moncton, and it's packed. I mean, just rammed. And Mark Sauvé goes, actually, bud, I'm going to host tonight. You just do a guest spot or whatever. I'm like, oh, whatever, sure. And Mark Sauvé goes up to host. And it was, keep in mind, I'm like 6 months into comedy. And Mark Sauvé goes up, and it's a rowdy room. You can always tell the energy in the room by how many people are still standing when the intro song is playing. Like a bunch of people are still standing, and I'm like, oh shit. So Mark goes up, and he's just like wrangling them, and he goes, it does 20, 25, 30 minutes to kind of finally bring this room together. I go up to a guest spot, but I remember watching him and being like, oh shit, I have to do this tomorrow night because I was hosting the rest of the weekend. And so I'm really nervous. Brand new comic. I do my guest spot. It's fine. The next day, I saw what happened the day before, the rowdiness. I'm like already nervous. I show up, and packed house, and it's sort of rowdy, and there's no Mike McDonald in the room. So I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I go to the front desk of the Crown Plaza in Moncton, and I go, can you call Mike McDonald's room? Because the show they're literally playing the intro song, and I'm about to go up to host. The middle is there, but there's no Mike McDonald. Call up to the room, wake him up. Hello? I go, oh, hey, Mike, my name's Julien. I'm your MC. Are you coming down? He goes, oh, what time is it? I go, it's 8 o'clock. We're about to start. He goes, oh, fuck. I thought it was a 9 o'clock show. He was sleeping, fully asleep. And the show is starting. The Ramones is playing, and the Yuck Yucks, hey, oh, let's go. I'm like, oh, shit. So I'm like nervous. I'm freaking out. And he's like, all right, kid, just kill some time. I'll be down. So I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh, shit, kill time. I don't have time. I have maybe 10, 12 minutes of material. And that's being generous. So I go up on stage nervous, this big rowdy room, and I start performing and just bombing. I mean, I do my opening joke, bomb, second joke, bomb. I'm just quiet. They go from quiet to talking amongst themselves. And then at one point, there's someone in the back goes, this guy sucks. And I go, what'd you say, man? What's that? And he's like, it's all right, man. Go ahead. I'm like, no, say it. Go. What'd you say? Goes, the guy goes, well, the manager's standing next to me, and he said, if I answer you, I'm going to get kicked out. So I can't say it. So I'm like, so this guy's got a leg up on me, this heckler. He's already like funnier, and he's like, he's more in the moment than I am, because he's like, the manager's going to kick me out if I say what I really want to say, bro. So I go, just say it. Who cares? He goes, I said you suck. And so I'm like, again, a new comic. I don't know what to do. So I'm like, shut up, man. I'm trying to live my dream up there, and people are cheering. So I do my time. I'm supposed to do 20 minutes or something like that. I do like 8, bring up the middle. And he bombs because I set up the stage poorly. And then Mike McDonald comes up, finally shows up in the room, and yeah, there was these two other guys like heckling nonstop, like close to the stage, and Mike just shows up on stage. I'll never forget it. And he's like, goes up, legend Mike, and he's just staring at these two guys, and people start laughing and giggling and laughing more, and it's just Bill without saying anything, just builds to this big laugh, and people are laughing. And then he's just staring at these guys, and as soon as it dies down, he goes, "Get the fuck out of here." That people cheer, and then he goes on to just blow the roof off the place, and I'm in the back like, oh my god, there's a 10:30 show, I have to do this again. And he just absolutely was legendary. Mike McDonald, storytelling, just I watched him from the back of the room. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. It was so good. He was so just tight and just talking about it's in the moment stuff. And anyway, did the 10:30 show. It ended up being fine, but that was my first time meeting Mike McDonald. We kind of got off track there, but I had to tell that story.
We're gonna have to chat again. I'm pretty sure. I'm just gonna put up my link tree is running on the bottom, so people can. Oh, hold it. That's the wrong place. That's not the bottom.
It is the bottom. I see it on the bottom.
Yeah, no, that's your link tree there.
Yours came up though, up top of it.
Up top of the bottom. I'm just trying to
figure
what happened. It's the wrong button. See, I should be doing this with my glasses on, but I'm vain for
I don't have my glasses on.
Now it's working. So there's the link tree at the bottom. If you want to support the channel, the first thing says buy me a drink. You can do that. Now we've been at this for over an hour already, which I usually consider to be about the average length of the show. So you've had the podcast over the past year. This past year, there's been so much, the changes in the States, the COVID lockdown, changes with travel restrictions. There's been no shows. How do you feel about the past year, if you were to?
You know what, man? At the beginning, it was stressful. March hit. Everything was at first. Remember, everything was postponed at first.
Yeah.
To all your March gigs and April gigs were pushed to like May and June. Very cute. And then it was like, oh yeah, the postponements started getting canceled. And then we're like, we'll do the fall. And then that started getting canceled. So at first it was really stressful. And then very quickly, I feel like the industry pivoted to digital shows, online Zoom shows. I'm not talking about like open mic Zoom shows or whatever to practice. I mean like corporates, like good paying gigs. So the last year and a half, I've been doing a lot of Zoom corporates, a lot, government contracts, businesses, and so on. And so it was a real blessing because at first I'd heard someone say, yeah, man, I didn't get into comedy I was against Zoom shows. I heard someone say, I didn't get into comedy to talk to a computer screen. I was like, yeah, man, me neither. And then I was sitting at home one day and I was like, how many people during a global pandemic would kill to just walk into your closet here, talk to a computer for an hour and get paid pretty well? And so I did a couple, I think throughout the summer, did a couple corporates, and they really ramped up in the fall. Christmas was crazy, one of the busiest corporate seasons. And so I've done a lot of Zoom or online. Sometimes it's not always Zoom, MS Teams or WebEx, but a lot of online shows. And I got to a place where I really enjoyed those. And I still do. I mean, they're just a different muscle, a different beast altogether. But I have found that online corporates, compared to a comedy club or a theater, suck, obviously. But compared to a real life corporate, online corporates are the same or better. So I was like, oh, you know what? There's a different vibe. Like everyone's in this together sort of feeling, and people are into it. And so I've done a lot of virtual comedy shows. I did there's a couple honeymoon periods there, like last August, September, live shows started up again between the first and second wave of COVID. Then we were shut down for the whole winter. Then in February again this year, it started up again. So there was a couple waves of little where we got a little taste of live performing. But overall, it was pretty much digital. And I got to a place where I was grateful and still am for those shows. I mean, I would I would do if there was a demand for post-pandemic corporates, I would do them. I just don't think there's that much of a demand for them virtually, but I love them. The money's the same. You're at home, no travel. As long as you're set up technologically, you're fine. And so it's been a lot of that, a lot of a big learning curve. The tech, everyone got tech savvy in the last year. All comics, you got ring lights and
that's why I love StreamYard. It doesn't require a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you've learned a lot on StreamYard compared to when you first started using it. There's all these, like putting up the link tree on the bottom and the scroll and the comments and all. It's been a learning process, but I do think that we will take some of it and implement it in the future. Like, for me, it's the podcast and online shows if there's a demand. So I do think there's an element of what we learned over the last 18 months or 16 months. There's an element of that we will take through forever in our careers.
Boom. Well said. So yeah, seeing it come through the future, seeing there's virtual comedy clubs right now, like Rodney Ramsey has his virtual comedy club.
Yeah.
And I guess with the Zoomies or Zoom shows, a lot of that is having somebody there to curate the audience to make sure that people who are talking to their dog get muted or
exactly. The person watching with a baby on their lap is muted.
Yeah.
I've done shows where you're doing a show and all you hear is and I'm like, and you can't see who it is because it's like everyone's mic is the same. And it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. And or if you like, that's the beauty of doing it with like two screens, that I can see the audience, so I can point and talk to people, whereas they see me full screen. Makes a difference.
So you've done Zoom shows over the last year. Do you prefer to hear the audience or not hear them? That's a question I like to ask comics. I like to get to the bottom of this.
I prefer a curated audience.
So like some people are unmuted, some are muted, sort of thing.
And there's somebody behind the control panel just going and muting the people that are not constructive, like not necessarily like the hecklers, because if I want to interact or talk with somebody, I want to have them be able to talk back.
Just background noise or whatever.
Yeah, background noise, or somebody who's got a fan right beside their microphone, or or the dog is barking, or they're in their car with a siren.
Despite all that, like I've actually found that I like curated for sure, but what I've found is I actually prefer when everybody is muted and all the cameras are off. Everybody. I just go in to the studio, look at the camera, and just do an hour of comedy to nothing. I actually prefer that to curated, because I've done curated where there's like 300 people on the Zoom and you do a bit and you just hear one guy go, ha! And it's like, oh shit, am I bombing? Like, oh god, like, you know what I mean? It was like, there's 300 people there and you hear like one or two people go, ha! And so I came to like not hearing them at all. But actually my favorite was no cameras, no mics, but comments. So I'm literally just staring into a blank camera, and I have my computer next to the camera, and I see comments scroll up, LOL, laughing emoji. That was my favorite.
Have you experienced hybrid shows?
Like you're like at a theater, but it's like for the internet only sort of thing?
There's only one that I participated in, but I've been aware of a couple others that there's a mix between live performers and Zoom performers. So there's a big screen on television for them. Yeah. And so one of the Zoom windows you see is actually a physical audience.
I have at Hubcap this year. Yeah.
Okay. I did it for the Calgary Funny Fest.
And
it was a neat experience. I mean, they weren't heavily curated. I think most everybody was mute, but I was able to, like, I could see the crowd laughing, like belly laughs with some of my jokes, and so that was kind of encouraging to see a community that was there to laugh.
Sure, absolutely, to get some reaction. But God, I'm so glad that we're getting out of this.
Yeah.
I like to think that we're at the tail end of this. There still are some doomsayers I talk to all the time. They're like, "Wow, they're saying a fourth wave by Christmas, the Delta variant." I'm like, "No, I can't handle this anymore. I'm done. I've done my best. This is a year and a half. I've followed everything. I'm like now done, fully vaxxed, waxed, and ready for hot boy summer."
Boom. All right. That's a new beach movie. Your father's saying thanks, Julian and Paul. Enjoyed this. It's your parents just call you. They call you Julian. They don't never say my son at all, or anything of that nature. So we love our child. Just we love the Julian.
They are my biggest fans.
You have got Jen, but you're her biggest fan too. So I guess
Oh, that's right.
Even
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Julian, I want to thank you for participating in this and enjoying it. It's going to be up on YouTube and Facebook for anyone who wants to rewatch. Julian's link tree is right there, so you can freeze frame and take a look at it. Thank you for all the comments, Mom and Dad, and Dave, everybody else who's tuned in to watch. Next week, actually, at 6 p.m., the guy who wrote this book.
That's awesome.
It's Idiot's Guide to Comedy Writing. Yeah. Jim Madrinos will be on the show, and we'll be taking your questions about comedy writing.
And the Julien Dionne Show with Jen Grant on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube 5 days a week.
7:30 a.m. live, but the recordings will be up for people to listen to as well.
That's right.
Take care. Be well.
Thanks, brother. You too, man.
Bye.